Hello and welcome back to Toby's song explanations about lyrics that are going to appear in my book, Sticks and Stones and My Life in Words. Okay, so I think, one thing to mention really, obviously I've been concentrating quite heavily on Little Angels songs, but I think, what is really significant about that era was that we grew up in public. We grew together as people. We'd started out as young kids. Jim Dickinson was only 16 years old when we signed the record deal, can you believe? And we were, in our late teens, early 20s. And so we went from little kids in the northeast of England, really, into a record deal, an international record deal. And we're given that license of being able to do music every single day. Now, that is an incredibly significant thing. Whenever I produce bands, they say, oh, what's the secret? How do you get your record? How do you become so successful? All that sort of stuff. And I say, well, it's because we were able to do it every day. I don't think you can really achieve what you need to achieve as a band unless you are doing music every day, one way or another. And I don't mean that has to be your actual job. I just think that when you're in those early years and you're fighting and striving to get where you want to go, so much of it is about the endeavour. So much of it is about waking up every day and playing your instrument, writing a song, writing some lyrics, working on the way that you're going to look, or getting ready for a photo session, that sort of thing, or preparing to go in the studio. And we'd done all of that. We'd had sort of two and a half years, nearly 3 years sort of thing of doing a lot of touring and playing all over the country. And that had grounded us and got us into that point where we were determined. But then when we got our record deal, it was all about, right, this is our job. We're going to do this on a daily basis. And everyone, I think, we all leaned on each other. We all improved. I think that's the thing, through that period of time, through those 3 albums, through that nearly 8-year period of working together, it was sort of a very slow, improvement, but steady, very steady improvement. We learned from our mistakes. We learned from our successes. We were able to recognise where things were going right, where things were going wrong, how we were operating with each other, how we operated with the record label. Believe me, it's an incredibly difficult thing to sort of navigate all of that stuff, but we did it. I often sort of think about Bruce as a guitar player. He went through an incredible evolution as a player. He already was fantastic, but that sort of step up every inch of the way. He used to play hours every single day on his guitar and work on it. Same with Jim, absolutely staggering stuff. I think I've said before, Jim wasn't just influenced by rock and roll. He was influenced by a lot of the sort of dance music at the time and things like that, so which was a really important thing. When I think back to it now, how important all that was, because he brought those elements that wouldn't ordinarily have been there, like the sequencing and things like that. So, and it was the same for me. It was the same for me as a songwriter. That kind of early sort of period where I was starting to write songs was very, as you might expect, it was a young person's perspective. I wasn't really thinking a lot about the words. I wasn't really thinking a lot about what I was trying to say. But very quickly I started to get a grasp of that and understand what kind of person I was and how I was going to do it and what I was going to say. But you have to be, I think part of a songwriter's trick is you have to be open to everything around you. You're influenced by not just the music you're listening to, but the world around you, the people that you're involved with, and it ramps up. Because I was doing it for a job, and I was, by this point, I felt the responsibility of writing songs, and I'd fallen in love with writing songs. I've never been a great singer. I've never been a great instrumentalist, but I know that my imagination and the things that I bring in terms of the songwriting, that's the bit I loved, and that's the bit I was good at. I started to understand that. I think there's something magic about being able to couple chords together with a melody and words and make it into a song. It's an extraordinary thing, And so I was evolving. We were working on material for the first album. Mike Lee had joined the band, and I started to really get my feet under the songwriting table, if you like, and I was discovering stuff about myself all the time, and sort of creating better songs and finding better ways into the ideas. And so the song I'm going to talk about today is absolutely about all of this. It's about probably the most important song I ever wrote in Little Angels, and probably one of the most important songs I've ever written, Don't Pray For Me. Now, this song was an extraordinary epiphanal moment. I think I've told you before, in my household, my dad was an ex-teacher, but he was at the time he was running a building firm. My mum was very learned. She was a scholar, etc. But we used to talk a lot about politics. We used to talk, as well as listen to a lot of great music. But they also used to watch a lot of TV. Specifically the sort of magazine programs like Panorama, and I remember my dad being obsessed with The Sky at Night, things like that, and I just used to sort of go in and watch it. But it did go in, it was very much part of my thing, part of the environment that I was part of. And I can remember watching this program about, in a similar way to No Solution, it was a program about teenage runaways, not obviously not the same as the teenage suicide. It was a totally different sort of view, but very, very similar, about this sort of epidemic of kids running away from home and going to London, and the results of that, and how they ended up, and the struggles, and it really affected me, because again, I thought, in a similar way to No Solution, that could be me, that could be my friends, And I can remember walking out of that program, having watched it, and by the time I got to the bottom of the stairs, the title was in my head. Now, I have no idea how the title got there. And I've read about this from other songwriters, how these things, it's almost like a visitation. It's the weirdest thing. Obviously, I don't really believe in the sort of ethereal nature of that. I don't. But what I do think is you're channeling things all the time. And if you open your mind to the possibilities of creativity, I think your subconscious funnels this stuff. And then if you're open to it, it will give you an idea. That's all. The only way I can explain it. But I got the song, the title, Don't Pray For Me. It was in my head at the bottom of the stairs. As I was running up the stairs, I was singing the title to the song with the melody that ended up on the song. By the time I got into my bedroom, I was singing words for the verse. And by the time I picked up my guitar, I'd already thought of what the riff was going to be. And it's an open C chord, and I started doing that simple movement. Now, here's the thing. It was inspired by the rhythm of the words, not the other way around. I was going da 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 da. The melody of that verse was entirely coupled to the rhythm of the guitar. So all I can describe it as I just opened up my mind completely, and I allowed the trail and the journey to happen entirely unimpinged by anything else, any other external influences or anything. I just jumped in. I fell into this funnel and allowed it to happen. That's the only way I can explain it. And so the melody was coming, and I was finding the words for the melody. I wasn't finding chords and then fitting the melody around them. I was doing it the other way around, and I came up with a whole weird bunch of chords, because the chords are quite unusual, even though they're only C's and F's and things like that. And I was using F major, F minor, F minor 7. There's an E major in there. There's an A major. There's a D. And the way that they're put together is quite unusual. But I didn't care. It wasn't like I was trying to find this really incredible set of chords. It's just that they were the chords that were needed. And I can remember feeling breathless about it. But I wrote the whole song in about 10-15 minutes and then put it away. I didn't take it to the band for quite a while. And then we were going to go into the studio to record some demos. And I remember we were working at Black Barn Studios, which is run by Robin Black. I don't know whether he's even still around anymore, but Robin was famous for being involved with Black Sabbath, some early Black Sabbath records. And we used to work there quite a lot. And we were working on these demos for songs that we'd already written and rehearsed. And I remember at the end of the session of the first day, say, something like that, our then manager, who was also involved in helping us do the record the demos, said, "Have you got anything else?" And I said, "Well, I've got this one idea." And I played him the song, and I can remember, I'll never forget his eyes widening and him going, "Oh, this is fantastic, we've got to record this." And I don't know whether we recorded it in that evening or whether we did it, maybe just sketched it out that evening, then we recorded it the next day. But very quickly it evolved from nothing into something. And like I say, all I can say is it was visited upon me, and I have no idea where it came from. But it was a moment, an epiphanal moment for me. It was a moment of realization and a moment of, I guess, a kind of realization that that songwriting could be something different than just sat down with a guitar and trying to bash it out. It could be a natural thing. It could be something that you had no control over, and it was a real emotional thing for me, a real emotional moment. And all I can really explain is that I just allowed that to happen to me. But I'm very proud of that song, and it was again almost uncontrollable. The words were uncontrollable. I couldn't get them out of my pen quick enough onto a piece of paper. I mean, seriously, that was how it happened. And so I wrote the song very quickly. We recorded the song for the album. I mean, the irony is that when we released it as a single, it didn't activate at all at radio at all. I remember hearing it on Radio 1 once, and Simon Bates taking the mickey out of the song, and kind of like, it just nothing happened to it, sort of thing, which was a real disappointment. But the odd thing is that the only people that really matter are the fans, and the fans made it a success, and it's still the song that's most requested. I think it's one of the most authentic things I've ever written. And the odd thing about it is that when I look back at that song, from a lyrical point of view, the character, the protagonist in that story is actually me. Even though it absolutely was inspired by Teenage Runaways and the story surrounding that, in truth, I think what I did was I sort of, I guess I filtered that through my own experiences of leaving Scarborough and wanting to be in a band and become successful as a musician, and then coming back to Scarborough and experiencing the cold shoulder, actually, weirdly. Friends of mine would cross the street to avoid talking to me because we'd been on the radio, that sort of thing, and it was a kind of, I guess there was that sort of natural, I don't know, small parochial town stuff going on, which, it happens all the time, and it's not unexpected. But it was a bit of a shock, and I remember that. I think it was a bit of a reaction to that. So really, the character in that song is me, I think. Because also there's lots of other factors that go into the reasons why I wrote these songs, and there was quite a lot of melancholy in the songs. I mean, I always remember Paul McCartney saying something very, very, very good, that he said, melancholy is a really important tool of songwriting. There's nothing wrong with it. And I think that's absolutely the truth. I think we all feel sad and melancholy from, probably on a daily basis about whatever, and so it's very much a part of the human condition that we have to experience that and go through it, and how those experiences then impact on us is how we deal with them, sort of thing. So yeah, very important song to me. It still remains one of my favourites. And the weird thing about this song is every time I play it, it feels like the first time I've played it, and I don't know if there's anything better I can say about it. I can remove myself from that song as the writer. It now sits as a piece of work that somehow I had something to do with.